Okay, so I'm hoping everybody can see this. We're going to be talking about peri-competition nutrition tactics and improvements, plus supplementation guidelines for coaches. So, guys, a little bit about me. Like Blake said, I am a exercise science major out of Winthrop University, and I began and founded the Nutrition Store LLC right here in Spartanburg and in Greenville. I hope my video is working right now, but anyway, the whole mission with what we do is honesty and providing the real data and literature to support what we talk about, which is, vitamin supplements and nutrition. But I do take a specific passion and interest to strength and conditioning, and that's why we're going to delve into this today. So, peri-competition nutrition tactics. Some things that I want us to have as, outcomes today. Understanding the pitfalls of your competitors, your athletes. I kind of built this guide with the understanding that a lot of you are going to be working with team athletes. However, things can get more specific if you work on an individual level with your athletes. But some outcomes are to understand the role of the strength and conditioning coach when it comes to nutrition for the athlete. What is your role? How much control do you actually have, etc. Energy system requirements per sport. That plays a big role, and we'll get into that as far as like nutritional strategies, more so on the individual level. And then also Stephanie and the team at SMI provided me with some data on what common high school athletes and junior varsity athletes consume pre, intra, and post-workout. And I also collected some data from my local hometown high school as well. So we'll be going over that, kind of making some changes. Supplementation. What are supplements? Are they necessary? What is actually effective and what isn't, right? And then we're going to be talking about how to communicate that with your athlete and their parents, right? So let's get on into it. So common pitfalls of, peri-workout nutrition, right? What is your role as a strength and conditioning coach? It's not your scope of practice, right? Nutrition, what they eat, what they're doing at home, that is not what your specific focus is. However, what their performance outcomes are, that is your, scope of practice. So a lot of factors go into the athlete's nutritional strategies, school funding, how's the home life, right? As a coach, we can't ethically make dietary programs or, legally, technically, we can get into that. This isn't to say that you can't make a dang good diet. It's just to say you probably shouldn't if you want to avoid any, legal implications. And then talking about it, talking with your athletes about it, your role should really just be have a conversation, in my opinion, right? The more you try to control their lives, especially if they're a junior varsity high school, they're probably going to reject that and go the opposite direction because they don't like being, told they can't do something. It's human condition. Understanding energy systems and their sport-specific role can help you as a coach. And here's why. Because each one, and these are just kind of some magnitudes. I like to put this in every presentation that I do just to show you guys the kind of importance. We can talk more on that later in Q&A if you'd like. But yeah. Anyway, each sport that you participate in is going to have different energy system requirements. And that can play a role in what type of nutritional strategies they need pre, post, etc. Deferring micronutrient deficiencies, a lot of that comes down to what's the sex, the age, their nutrition. This is actually just a breakdown of aerobic glycolysis. We're going to talk about that towards the end, but you can see that all macronutrients do get converted into an energy source in some way, shape, or form, even if it's not efficient. ATP-PC. It is the result of creatine phosphate, endogenously produced though. We can talk about supplements later. And its conversion to ATP. One thing that I like to remind people is that the ATP-PC system works with all of the other systems, but think of stop-start, quick, and then cease, right? So initiating that immediate power output, right? Some sports that rely heavily on this, football, there's a lot of stop-start, unless you're just, nonstop, run and play. Varying track and field events rely on this initiation of power. Golf, the anaerobic glycolytic system. So anaerobic means without oxygen. Duh, right? Transformation of glucose to lactate when oxygen is limited, right? So it is responsible for quick outputs of power, but it's going to extend far beyond what the PC or the phosphocreatine can generate for your, output. So, just showing some examples here of sports that involve this system pretty heavily: basketball, tennis, volleyball, and then the aerobic system. Oxygen's present here, right? So we are extending our energy exertion far beyond, what we can generate without oxygen present. So it's present, ready to kill glucose and lipids, right? It can break down protein. And, that's something we see a lot in my specific field. People overconsume protein. And we can talk more on that when we get to the supplements. But yeah, it's not initiating power. It's not as powerful as the other two, but it's consistent. It's long term, right? And then obviously we know what aerobic system is, guys. All three energy systems, they work together, right? And that's something that when I was in school and, actually doing some internship work at a high school as a strength coach, I just assumed that the energy systems were, start, stop, right? But they're all on a continuum. They're all on they work together. But, let's say, getting into the nutrition, let's say that you are a individual strength coach, a private, facility strength coach. You're working with 1 to 2 to 3 athletes that are different sports, right? And one of them's football. One of them plays plays soccer. The other one's a runner, right? Just for example. Obviously, your programming is going to be different. Your, strategy of training. But the nutritional conversations that you have with your athletes should be a little bit different. Obviously, with aerobic energy systems, we see that a super compensation of glycogen and carbohydrates, 12 to 24 hours prior is going to be more beneficial than the anaerobic, where we can consume, a high amount of, low GI, low distress carbohydrates 2 to 3 hours before an event and have a pretty, significant outcome. So I just said that for y'all's reference. Energy systems and nutrition strategy. So, ATP PC. So we know that, creatine is produced endogenously in the pancreas, the liver, and the kidneys. So, this system's going to function no matter what the athlete's eating. I'm sure most of you have heard the age-old conversation that steak, red meat, it's got creatine in it. It's not going to be enough to have that super saturation effect. But like I say here, creatine monohydrate is effective. More on that later. Anaerobic glycolytic, it relies heavily on glucose and carbohydrates, right? So timing is pretty important. And really, like I was saying on the previous slide, if you have an athlete that is doing those quick, immediate output bursts from 10 seconds to 2 minutes, it's going to be good to have a conversation with them about making sure that a few hours beforehand they are having a decent amount of carbohydrates. And then aerobic, all three macronutrients play a role. Yes, they do. With that, that's where you hear the carbo loading, right? You want to basically load carbohydrates way in advance to prepare them for the endurance event. Now, a lot of this, guys, like I said, you're a strength coach, and your goal as a strength coach is to optimize their performance. More so, have a conversation about this so they can improve their game as well. So what do typical high school athletes eat peri-competition, guys? So based on the data that I was given before I show you guys the chart and etc., we didn't have that much feedback as far as intra and post-competition or post-event consumption. So I basically went off of pre-competition nutrition, right? And I think that if we had to narrow it down to the most important, eating window, I mean, post, we can make an argument for sure. Obviously, you've got to consume something at some point. But pre-training, pre-competition nutrition is vital, especially when you're performing at at what you want to be a maximal level. So you'll see here, guys, on the spreadsheet we're looking at, varsity football, junior varsity, other, basically we've got a bunch of high schools here in the local South Carolina area. And we went through and asked the athletes, what do they typically have before a game, right? In their corresponding sport. So, out of these, we see that 33% of said pre-competition meals is fast food and snack food. And really, if it was a, long drawn out list of things, I just put it under, other or whatever. So, steak and chicken or steak/chicken and potato is really the only thing that I saw in there that might be decent, assuming they don't have any gastrointestinal distress with red meat. So, here's what your strategy as a coach should be to look at and analyze and have the conversation with your athletes about. So, we have limited data on the, based on our sample, but it's safe to assume this is common, considering how the status of high school, junior high school athletes do eat in general, right? Outside of the sport they're in. These days, especially, it's common for, health and nutrition is getting more and more prevalent, but a lot of them eat crap, right? So the coach's control of the food intake is limited, but it can still be monitored and communicated, right? Balance is the most important thing here. Now, like I said when we started, your basically understanding of energy systems is important, but you as a coach, you might have 30 or 40 athletes on a team, and you can't provide this, obviously, but having a conversation with each one individually based on their specific position, a tight end versus a lineman, or another position that might not basically need the same nutritional needs, you can't really do that. You don't have the time, right? So balance, right? If you have to explain one thing, it's balance. And what I mean by that is a equal ratio of proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and even water. Hydration, H2O is a macronutrient, and that is something that needs to be consumed as well. So, Pop-Tart, that's 95% carbohydrates. Very, very highly processed carbohydrates as well. That's going to have a fast gastric emptying rate. They're going to be hungry. They might have an insulin spike and crash long before the competition event even happens, right? Peanut butter, while traditionally seen as a protein source, it's actually 75% of its caloric value is fat, right? It's not necessarily balanced. Protein shakes, also not a great idea if that's all they're consuming. So the best way to go about it is consuming something that has an equal amount of all three of those macronutrients. So why balanced, right? Blood glucose management, that's something that would probably deal more with the specific one-on-one coaching to athlete, strength sports, combat sports, even, track and field events where, like I said, you're working one-on-one with them, but it is important. It umbrellas the needs of all three energy systems and the sports that recruit them. And it's a lot easier for athletes to understand. Once again, your goal is to get on their level, have a conversation, encourage them to make the right choices, but you can't really control them or demand them. And once again, I'm speaking from a place of talking to high schoolers, junior varsity, based on what we've provided here. So, supplementation. This is my specialty, guys. A little bit about me, just to kind of give a background, right? Because a lot of you who are watching this likely went and got your undergrad in the same thing as myself. Exercise science, traditionally, we are kind of taught to stay away from supplements. Not really stay away from them, but with the understanding that they're not FDA regulated, we don't really touch them. We don't dig into the data there. It's not really our job. And I went through with that perspective all through college, got a part-time job at a locally owned supplement store in Rock Hill. And basically he started providing this literature and this information that is actually supportive. And we do have mechanisms to explain why certain things help. But your job as a strength coach is to at least understand what works and what doesn't, and understand how to communicate supplements to your athletes, and also what to watch out for. We'll get into all that, but I think that it is crucial to to understand what supplements they should not be taking, and explaining that to them in a way that is not going to demean them or criticize them, right? So what are supplements? And I think that a lot of us get hung up based on the marketing, especially young athletes get hung up in thinking that they are, some kind of anabolic or ergogenic aid, right? Because of the marketing that is behind it. You look at a lot of products, and your young athletes are going to see a lot of products that are making claims about being able to elicit some insane activity or behavior. They're not, right? They're to supplement what you are not receiving from a properly structured diet or lifestyle. So these can include vitamins and minerals, protein supplements, ergogenic aids, and more. And I say in parentheses here, such as creatine. The reason I say that, creatine's not really a supplement. Classified it is, but there is not really a legitimate way to consume enough creatine through food alone to to get that supersaturation of phosphocreatine and elicit more power. So supplements can be problematic for athletes due to the industry that they stem from, the supplement industry. And like I said, guys, I see it firsthand every day. The marketing, the sketchy manufacturing tendencies, the way that these products are labeled. It is a industry that is trying to, largely prey on people's lack of attention span and desire for quick results and, quick improvement. So health and fitness bodybuilding world market these products as highly beneficial. And a lot of times they're compared to PEDs, right? Also knowing that they're unregulated by the FDA can be a concern. And that's something that's often, especially in the medical side of things, we're pretty connected with the medical field here up in the upstate of South Carolina. And one of the most common things when I'm talking with a medical doctor or, a surgeon or something is, well, we don't know because it's not FDA regulated. And, that becomes a problem when basically the smaller companies start to taint their ingredients and their products with illegal things, not being legitimately tested. There are third-party testing companies that we rely on to verify quality, right? Also with supplements, guys, is they often lack a mechanism of action. And that's a concern for myself, and it should be for you, because if your doctor prescribed you a drug and he said, here, you're going to take this every day for 2 months, and you ask them, well, hey, how does this work? How's this going to help me? And they say, well, we tested it on 50 dudes and they all told us that it worked. Right. Would you trust it? No. And that's kind of how the research tends to, go a lot of times in the supplement world. Are they necessary? Not at all. Supplements are never necessary, but, deficiencies are something that I see as the most common thing that need to be talked about. Because once again, think about vitamin D, 80% of Americans are deficient in that. And magnesium, potassium, etc. We'll get on that in a little bit. But so what supplements actually work? If you're working with a team, you see, one of your athletes get out their bag and whatever, and they're pouring something in their cup. These are the things that if you see it, don't fuss at them, understand it, maybe have a conversation with them, make sure their parents are on board with it. But these are things that actually have a decent body of data to support them. So let's proceed. Vitamins and minerals, right? So we talked about deficiencies on the last slide, and we'll get more on that in a few slides. But vitamins and minerals are, very effective. We know that they are critical for, maintaining homeostasis in a lot of ways, maintaining proper hormone function, bone resorption, muscular contraction. These things are very essential, and that's why I encourage everybody to go and get some blood work, worked up to basically maximize their output, right? So whey protein, it's the most complete protein source known. Yes, it is. I get on debates with people on this on TikTok a lot, and it's pretty fun because, it's common to think that, red meat, it's got to be the best. It's technically not the most efficient. Doesn't mean it's bad, but whey is one of the most complete sources of protein and the most biologically available sources. So creatine monohydrate, right? This is the most researched supplement in the world. Last time I checked the examine.com data, they had over 800 trials that have been conducted on creatine. It's fairly easy to understand creatine and why it's effective when you understand the ATP PC system. So it's nothing to be scared of. It's nothing to run away from. It does not, in most people, cause gastrointestinal distress. And that's something that I noticed when I was in, younger years in school. A lot of coaches, and a lot of parents especially, the myth continues that, creatine is a steroid, or it's going to, make your kidneys fail, or you've got to drink gallons and gallons of water a day. And that just simply isn't true. So those are effective. These are kind of the latter few. Beta-alanine, you've probably heard of it. It's responsible for the paresthesia, the tingling when you take a pre-workout supplement. It is fairly effective as it it basically contributes to the production of carnosine, which helps buffer acid, and it can extend power output in the 40 to 60 second range. So huge fan of that. Not really the tingles though. The next one, caffeine, right? We love coffee. Now, if you are working with high school athletes, I don't think that you should be allowing them to drink energy drinks. You shouldn't be allowing them to drink, pre-workouts in front of you at least. That's kind of just a moral and ethical stance I have against, kids under 18. I don't think that they're developed enough to be putting these, receptor, blockers or antagonizers in their body, but that's just personal. It is highly researched. It's been shown to be effective for a lot of variables in strength performance and in endurance. So, and then I have a little note here. It works by essentially pissing off adenosine receptors in your brain. And so basically they don't bond to the receptors that they need to, which when adenosine bonds, it causes relaxation and sedation. So you prevent that and it makes you excited as hell. Potential ones, you can look at these guys, look them up, do some digging on them. There is potential for benefit, but these are things that you really shouldn't be telling your athletes to take, and really none of them are. We'll just backtrack to the beginning of the little lecture. Your job as a strength coach is to really have a conversation with them. You don't control a lot of these variables, but you're arming them with information, and I think it's vital. So, common vitamin deficiencies for high school and college athletes. Now, the literature I pulled this from, I can send anybody who wants the references these resources, but they were mostly done on collegiate athletes. It's hard to get a lot of high school team athletes on board to go donate or give blood and get a mineral panel, right? Calcium, very, very, very common deficiency. It promotes bone health and also cardiovascular health. But, one thing I'll back up onto before I continue is vitamin and mineral deficiencies are also largely correlated with the sex of the athlete. If you're a female athlete, you're working with female athletes, iron deficiencies are something that you should always consider. Just look at, basically understand your population of athlete. Magnesium, it is the second most prevalent electrolyte in the body. Magnesium deficiencies make up also about 4 out of 5 Americans in general, and it plays such a huge role in blood pressure, glucose, but also muscular contraction. We see improvements in recovery rates from basically maximizing magnesium stores like crazy. Your REM sleep, your deep sleep is improved significantly, which means your hormones are optimized, and therefore you're able to perform a lot better over time. Vitamin D, we talked about that earlier. It is associated with so many benefits, guys. It's technically a hormone, and it's derived from cholesterol. And, the thing is, you can stand in the sun as much as you want. Humanity's just not producing and basically synthesizing the same amounts of vitamin D that we were. And it's probably due to us just not living outside in general, right? But also the rapid, technological advancement over the past 150 years probably contributes to that as well. But supplementation of vitamin D can reduce the risk of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and multiple sclerosis. People deficient in vitamin D may also may also experience increased testosterone levels after supplementation. Thought I made a typo there. And then potassium. Potassium is very, very critical for hydration, and it's a common thing, especially if you are drinking a lot of water, to oversaturate or overhydrate. If you're sweating and constantly drinking, you're not replenishing those electrolyte stores. Now, the main issue with potassium and your athletes is you can get them to eat a banana, you can get them to eat spinach, which are both fairly high in potassium, but supplementation of potassium is a difficult one because you can't take super high doses of it without getting sick. So as a coach, as a consultant, as a one-on-one performance coach, you probably shouldn't be recommending they go and take a few pills of potassium, especially pre-event, pre-competition. So vitamins. Okay, so this one's a fun one. I love to talk about this, guys, because the reason that I do what I do is to get away from the industry that supplements have been, built around. So, red flags with supplements. As previously mentioned, there are very sketchy tendencies in this unregulated industry, right? A lot of sketchy marketing, a lot of sketchy ingredients and workarounds and legal loopholes. It's common. So products geared and labeled towards aggressive or insane muscle growth should be of concern. If you see a bottle, I wish I had an example here, but if you see something that your athlete's taking and they are, it has a big monster bodybuilder on it, it's got all kinds of crazy colors, and it says, guaranteed to increase strength by, 150% in 2 weeks. That's usually a big red flag, right? But usually it means that it's just a really low dosed, ineffective product that's trying to take your money, but it could mean that it's an illegal substance guised or masked as a natural formula, right? We saw this a few years ago with Clemson University. I can't remember the athletes, but one specific product was being taken and they tested positive for it. It's called Ostarine. It's a selective androgen receptor modulator, or SARM. And the claim was, which they might have been lying, that they knew or they thought they were taking a natural, herbal product or something. There you go. They might have been taking a bottle labeled with, something crazy as a dietary supplement. SARMs are not supplements. More on that later. Proprietary blends. This is something that really back in the day made sense, but now if you are a coach and you see this on your own products or your athletes' products, it could be of concern because they're not willing to show you what is in there. Now, I say it made sense back in the day because 15, 20 years ago, before the internet was, massive like it is now, ingredients just weren't understood, right? And the data wasn't as easy to source on these ingredients. So if you made a product that was special and it did something very effective, you didn't want other companies ripping you off and getting your formula. But nowadays, everything's so transparent, you really shouldn't be doing this. So just tells me they have something that they have to hide. So red flags with supplements continued. Now, here's the thing. Your job's not to, care as much about this as I do. You're not supposed to be a supplement scientist. But I think that understanding and looking for little keywords can kind of raise concern for you and raise concern to the athlete and the parents. So I made a little list or a table here of things to watch out for. Ingredients, 1,3-dimethylamine, 2-amino-isoheptane, also known as DMHA, isopropyl-norepinephrine, RAD140, that's a SARM, YK11, AMP citrate. These are things that if you see it, obviously have the conversation, but I would run, right? Prefixes and suffixes. A lot of times this can mean that they are using what we call Dhea metabolites, and it is very attractive to young athletes in a team setting, especially, football players. I remember being in football and, one kid got this stuff, it was like methyl test or something. and it looked aggressive. He started getting results extremely fast. Come to find out, it was actually a methylated version of testosterone in a pill. Really messed up his liver and also messed up his hormones indefinitely. So, but just take a look over this. I believe this is going to be sent to each of you individually. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. NCAA banned substances. I've keep this on every lecture that I do on supplements, just because it's important to know, kind of like the little table back there. Stimulants, a lot of them, if they are prescription, they're banned. If they are, anything else that is illegal, if it's, crack, your athletes shouldn't be doing that anyway. More steroids, SARMs. SARMs are interesting, guys, because they are not dietary supplements and they are not considered drugs yet. They're in a research state. So the FDA identifies them as research chemicals. Now, we've seen in lab, and through countless amounts of studies, they're pretty effective. What they do, they selective androgen receptor modulators, right? So in theory, they target one receptor in your muscles to help them develop, to produce more power, to produce more endurance even. The problem with this is they still are in every regard steroids. Now, because of that, you are shutting down your endocrine system production. Now imagine a 16-year-old finding some of this online as a research chemical. If they take this for a prolonged amount of time, their performance will be easily 50 to 75% worse after they're done. And they're probably going to suffer some, mental side effects as well, especially that young, right? Let's move on. Here's some things to look out for. I've had this in this slideshow forever, but you can look over it and kind of see if you can point out the things that are not necessarily allowed. So this is a cool one, communicating supplements to athletes and parents. And that's kind of been the overarching concept of this talk today is, your role is not to control the athlete. It's to control their performance outcomes, but these all play a role. So it's important to be able to talk about this with your athlete or with their parents, right? Ultimately, what athletes or their parents allow them to do is out of your control. But what happens in training and on the field is. Many young athletes are susceptible to supplement marketing, and parents are often unaware. They just don't know, especially if they're little hellions like I was. With the internet, you can buy just about anything and not have it be known to the parents. So, but also I've seen it, being in a retail store, working with people every single day. Parents want their kids to improve. And if they feel like there's something missing in the coaching staff or in their training, they're going to do everything they can to maximize that performance, even if it means going to Google and searching for products or things that they really should not be searching for. So being able to communicate what the athlete may benefit from and what they shouldn't be doing is really, really beneficial, not only for your specific athlete, but for the whole team and the family. So having a surface level conversation rather than accusation and shame is the best strategy. And I say this once again from working one-on-one with these kids, with these athletes. I work with a lot of college athletes that come in the stores, especially, locally, Wofford students. Can't thank them enough for their support, but they trust us with this kind of stuff. And I learned really early on that even 18 to 22 to 23 year olds, if you tell them that's dumb, you shouldn't be taking that, here's why, they're going to do it, right? So at least being able to explain, hey, or do you really think this is a good decision to make right now when you have this, this, and this in front of you? Do you think that, you're thinking, short term? Ask questions, provoke conversation. Don't, provoke an argument. So making them aware of this stuff, because you want them to be an athlete for the rest of their lives ultimately. Now, you might not watching this, but, my goal as a consultant and as a, person who works with people on their diet and their nutrition, I want to see them stay healthy forever And the things they're doing now to optimize performance are going to leave them possibly handicapped later on in life. So anyway, that was from a few years ago, the NCAA banned drugs list. You guys can go click on that. It updates every year. They add things, by the way, that can't really be tested for. So creatine, for example, there is no test, to my knowledge, that can really test for creatine supplementation, but it's on there unless they pull it off this year. And thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. And as always, if you have any questions, I'm here to help. You can always shoot us a message on Instagram